Welcome to the College Football Bros, the podcast with three breakout hosts. And now, here are your hosts, Michael, Ryan, and Trey Newman.
Welcome to the College Football Bros podcast. I am Michael Newman, and I'm joined by the brother I played golf with this weekend.
Sure did. That's me, Ryan Newman.
And by the other brother who didn't get an invite.
I got left out of the party. Wow. Trey Newman.
It was a great time.
It was wonderful. I mean, I played like crap, but that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was more about the experience, right?
Okay, I thought you were going to say, don't worry, I played like crap too, but you just left me hanging there.
Well, I thought you meant you were speaking for both of us. We both played like crap.
Oh, it's true. It's true. Anyway, be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at CFB Bros, to our YouTube channel, and take advantage of our sponsor, Ryan.
Yeah, mybookie.ag is our sponsor. As you can see, if you're watching YouTube, you'll see it on YouTube here. So I'm just going to speak on my experience from MyBookie. It's been great so far. The first thing you need to know is that you can double your first deposit up to $1,000. So if you put $1,000 in, they'll give you a free $1,000 to play with. And they've also had many different promotions that you can do. So like, for instance, they already had the first week of NFL football, they gave you Kansas City. They put them at plus 54. And if you bet $50, you could have won 45. So it's just like a free $45 that you win. This past week, they had 12 bets on Saturday that were huge bonus odds. So 11 out of the 12 were just easy money they hit. One, Florida State screwed it. They gave you 2 touchdowns advantage on Florida State, and they still managed to screw it up. So screw Florida State. But everyone other than that, they all hit, and it was just plus money. It was huge odds. So it was free money essentially, and it's been great. So I highly encourage to go to mybookie.ag. I've had great customer service already. Just make sure to use the promo code CFBROS, and you'll get your first deposit up to $1,000. Can't really recommend it enough. I've had a few sporting websites in my past. This has been the best one for me. So remember, mybookie.com or mybookie.ag, and promo code CFBROS.
All right. Let's recap week 4, get right into it. Kansas State came back from down 35-14 to win at OU 38-35 on a game-winning 50-yard field goal from Blake Lynch with 2 minutes left. Seems like college kickers this weekend were actually making some big kicks.
Turned
clutch.
Yeah. Trey, what happened here?
I mean, Oklahoma, they go up 28-7 in the middle of the third quarter. And K-State, they were already without about 8 key contributors going into the game. So you think, it's over. I mean, the way Oklahoma's humming, K-State lost so much. But then, stop me if you've heard this before, OU defense, it got worn down in the second half, and they couldn't get stops when they needed it. Every time Kansas State got the ball, pretty much in the fourth quarter, Skylar Thompson, Deuce Vaughn, they were kind of knifing through the Sooner defense for big plays. I mean, they only had 10 first downs, so they really relied on those big plays, which was kind of surprising when you look back at the box score. But this game, though, it came down to that fourth quarter defense, but Oklahoma also lost the turnover battle 4-0. You can't, and no matter how good you are, losing the turnover battle 4-0, that's not going to help you. And I mean, just as an Oklahoma fan, it's got to be just so disheartening knowing that when K-State got the ball at the end, you kind of knew that they were going to score or at least move the ball on you. And that's rough. And I did want to make one last point on this game about the talent. You look at the talent composite. Oklahoma on their roster has 50 4 and 5 stars. K-State, how many do you think K-State has?
1.
0. They have 0. They have 0.
Oh, man.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah,
and they beat him last year. Obviously, it's 2 straight years now.
2 years in a row. Yeah, it's extraordinarily disappointing here for OU. Maybe you could understand the one last year, of course, going to K-State on the road, tough environment when Kansas State was littered with seniors, especially on the offense. But this year with people missing and a team that should be young, I mean, yeah, they had Skylar Thompson back, but it was just entirely a disappointing thing. And,
a team that just lost to Arkansas State
they just
at home.
Point. Just lost Arkansas State at home. It's a bad look here for the Big 12 and OU. But yeah, 4 turnovers. That's it. And then we got to kind of mention Spencer Rattler's 3 picks. That's just, you haven't seen that from OU quarterbacks in the last few years. They haven't played a freshman in the last few years, so you could probably attribute it to being a freshman. Rattler looks like he's going to be great, but
yeah, he played. I mean, overall, obviously, you could say that's other than the picks, but he did a lot of great stuff.
First half was amazing. Second half was pretty dang bad.
Fourth quarter in particular was
fourth quarter in particular. But I guess one of my main concern for Rattler at this point, other than the turnovers, is just rushing. I thought he would present more dual threat ability, kind of like Jalen and Kyler did the last couple of years for OU, and even Baker was able to do a little bit as well. But Rattler rushed for -5 yards in this game. So when they need a dynamic presence there, that's a huge thing in college football, is having that quarterback be able to run, and Rattler's supposed to be dual threat. So that's concerning if I'm OU as well. It's like, why weren't we, pressing the issue with him on the ground as well? So just so enormously disappointing. They're not, we can't write them off for the playoff yet. They've lost like crazy games like this before, but boy, it makes it a lot harder for them. They have zero room for error, and they have to win and maybe win some style points here in the future. Just if they're going up against a 1-loss SEC team, it's going to be very, very hard for them.
Well, I mean, okay, so I'm glad you said the thing about them not being eliminated, because so many people, I feel like, say that right when a team gets their first loss, especially I know,
but yeah,
every year under Lincoln Riley, OU has lost a game like this. I mean, it just obviously happened last year at K-State, and every year they've made the playoff. Now, obviously, it being game 1 and makes it
of the Big 12.
Oh yeah, sorry, game 1 of Big 12 play. Yeah, their first real game against an FBS opponent. But good point. Obviously, now I would make them an underdog to make the playoff, of course, because winning 9 straight or whatever they have left, 8 straight, is going to be tough. But they can do it. Like, it wouldn't shock me if they did it. They're going to be favorites in probably, I don't know, maybe all of them. We'll see. But so they're not eliminated, but not a great start,
harder,
obviously. And the defense is missing, some of their key players. Unfortunately, some of them won't be coming back. Jalen Redmond opted out of the season, maybe their best pass rusher. Caleb Kelly is hurt for the entire year. He was supposed to be a starter at linebacker. And Ronnie Perkins, he will come back at some point. He's been suspended. But
I mean, they started off with another tough one this week. It's just, it's not great. Really frustrating for your OU.
For sure. Okay, next game, Mississippi State got the win at LSU 44-34, and KJ Costello threw for an SEC record 623 passing yards in his first game under Mike Leach. Ryan, what'd you see here?
I mean, this is just Leach to the T. I mean, it's exactly who he is, exactly who he's been. Just throw it all over the yard, throw it to whoever is open. 10 different players caught a pass for Mississippi State. I mean, you don't see that really anywhere other than a Mike Leach offense. I love his quote from a few years ago. It's like, balance the 50% run and 50% pass. That's 50% BS, as he says. It's just, spreading it out and opening it up. It's just the way he looks at it. It was awesome. It obviously hurt LSU that Derek Stingley was not able to play in this game. He obviously had to be hospitalized, which sounds like he's okay. But I mean, this probably was a very different ball game if Derek Stingley was in that secondary. I don't think they would have given. Well, maybe. I mean, let's just say they would have given up 623 yards. Maybe they would have given up 500 yards instead of 623. Which in the midst of the game, that probably would have made a difference. Like, I'm not saying LSU would have won, but give me a break. Maybe the best corner in all of college football wouldn't have drastically made a difference in this one.
Okay.
Costello still did well, even with Stingley would have been there, but it was unfortunate for LSU. But yeah, it's funny how though he beat the record by like 80 yards. It wasn't like he just beat it by a few. Like I
never even heard who had the previous record.
It was some. I don't want to say the school, but it was some guy that I couldn't even remember. It wasn't like some huge, name that I even really remembered. I could look it up, but I forgot. But it was just LSU just kind of looked like they were a team that had so many young players. They were just inexperienced. They need more time to develop. They need more time to be in the system. It's just, it was kind of what we us bros thought going into the year. It's just, you cannot lose everything and keep up that level where you were at, or even be anywhere close to it. So it's disappointing for LSU, of course, but I don't think anybody's like shocked that this is what happened.
Yeah.
It was Georgia's Eric Zaire in 1993 against Southern Miss, threw for 544.
There you go.
All right, that's before
like
our time there.
Different.
I mean, Ryan, you brought it up. We were collectively, I think, pretty low on LSU coming into the year. The two of us, Ryan, we made it our lock under their season win total in the SEC. But I will say I was also low on Mississippi State coming into the year because I thought it was going to take a while. And not that I thought like, oh, that Mike Leach offense just isn't going to work in the SEC, that kind of a thing. I just thought it would take a while because that's what happened at Wazoo when he went to the Pac-12. It took a couple years for the offense to really get going and the team to really get going. But I'm clearly dead wrong about that. They broke the record first game, so at least working somewhat. And I do like KJ Costello, so I think they can, keep it up to some extent. And I like the way they used Kylan Hill. I kind of worried like that their best option, their most talented player on offense is a running back who to run the ball, but they made use of him in the passing game a ton. He had, I think, like 158 receiving yards. I don't think that. I'm looking at it right now, so I can say it confidently. but yeah, I mean, that's just couldn't be a better start for Leach.
And the other point that we haven't really talked about is LSU's offense. They didn't look outstanding. Like Brennan was a little uncomfortable at times, and Mississippi State doesn't even have that formidable of a defense. And Brennan just wasn't. It was hard for them to score. I mean, they put up 34. I know. I mean, it wasn't like it was horrendous, but it didn't look as easy.
I think.
Yeah, it just wasn't as easy though, obviously, as Mississippi State. So this game in a nutshell kind of validated our thoughts on LSU. But I do think like they can only improve. I mean, they're not going to face the air raid every week, so I'm not hitting the total panic button, but it's very alarming.
I agree with you.
And there's a lot of young talent. Like it should develop, but
and getting Stingley back.
But Pelini, he does have some work on that defense, and they got to get Brennan in more comfortable situations. They got to get Brennan in more comfortable situations to make it easier for him.
Yeah, the comfortable is the right word. He did not look comfortable, and he took way too many sacks. I don't even remember the number, but it was a lot.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
Not great, but understandable with all that they lost.
Yep.
Okay, Texas at Texas Tech. This was another crazy game. Weirdly, neither offense was actually great for such a high-scoring game. Both teams were below average in yards per play, but there were blocked punts, onside kicks, turnovers, all kind of resulting in scores or short fields. That's kind of how it got so out of hand. And of course there was overtime. So I'll just kind of recap the end of the game here. So Texas Tech took a 56-41 lead with just over 3 minutes left. So they're up 15. It kind of feels like it's over, but Ellinger led a quick touchdown drive. Texas got the onside kick, and then Ellinger led another touchdown drive, got the 2-point conversion. So they go to overtime, and that's where Texas won 63-56 was the final. So I mean, if you're Texas, definitely a concerning performance against a team that's not expected to be very good and just struggled against Houston Baptist. But, I mean, I guess you just take the win. You just take the win and move on. I listened to the Solid Verbal this week, and Dan Rubenstein was saying, win your clunkers. And that's, I guess, what Texas
Especially
did.
when the Big 12 looks like a huge clunker as a conference right now. So,
yeah,
just win it.
I mean, poor Red Raiders, though. It's like, this loss is tough to swallow anytime, but especially when you're playing, your big bad rival Texas. That's I mean, if you're Red Raiders, though, you kind of have to take solace in the fact that you kind of held Ellinger in check relatively for especially those first 3 quarters. Like Ellinger wasn't doing, great things. Obviously, he woke up in the fourth quarter, and that's what's cool. Like, how cool of a cat is Ellinger? Like when it mattered, he just he balled out. It was incredible. He didn't flinch. It was one of those things too. When they got the ball the last few times, you basically knew they were going to score. It was just you just had that feeling. But man, that was something. Chris Ash on defense does need to find some answers. I mean, I know Alan Bowman's great. That Vasher, the wideout, is impossible to defend, but I'm not writing their defense off yet, but there were some.
There were some missed tackles, and
the missed tackles was kind of bad. There were just so many big plays.
Like the Texas defense of the last couple years, where it's just like, man, where are they gonna put it together here? I mean, we kind of blamed it last year, obviously, on injuries and stuff, which was a huge piece. But I mean, this was not a good performance from the Longhorn defense, and it would cost them. I mean, they can't play like this, obviously, and go undefeated or have the aspirations of winning the Big 12, because the consistency is just what you need. I mean, you can't play like that. So, but you kind of said it though, Trey, from Texas Tech point of view, oh my gosh, it's so hard to swallow this, like up a couple scores with like 3 minutes left. All you have to do is
horns down. You got
exactly, recover an onside kick, and then you would win. Oh my goodness, that's just got to hurt. And then once it went to overtime, you kind of just had the feeling like this was just not even a chance. And then when Texas Tech got the ball in overtime, they just completely didn't even do anything positive on offense. It was like a sack, a penalty, maybe. I don't know. It was just atrocious. They had no chance. So, I feel so bad for Longhorn fan or for Red Raider fans, but we've been there. So,
yeah,
don't feel too bad. We've had Nebraska's had quite a few heartbreaks against Texas over the years. So,
we
understand.
Okay, next game we got here. Pitt beat Louisville 23-20. Trey.
The Panthers, man, they showed how good their defense can be. They held high-flying Louisville to only 223 yards. I mean, Louisville, though, they found one little spurt. They scored 17 unanswered points. They took the lead. And mainly in part because there was a couple turnovers that created short fields for them. But aside from that, Kenny Pickett did enough to muster out the win. Pitt's D, though, they were the reason they won. 7 sacks. They bothered Cunningham all day. In the fourth quarter alone, Louisville had the ball 3 times with the chance to win, and the drives resulted in interception, punt, and interception. So they did what they had to do in crunch time. And, overall, I know they won't play the Pitt's defense every week, but watching this, I'm a bit concerned about Cunningham's arm. Like, that was a liability this week. 9 of 21, 3 picks. I'm not writing him off at all because he will put up numbers, but it was just something that I kind of planted. The seed is planted in my head now to watch.
I completely agree with you. That's why I went under here. I think on Louisville this coming into the season. I just didn't have faith in Cunningham's arm. And if you go over a whole long season, you're going to need somebody to be a good enough passer. And we showed in this game. Obviously Pitt's got a great defense, but this was an atrocious game from Cunningham's point of view here. And as far as from Pitt, I feel like their offense is pretty much the same. It hasn't changed much at all. Pickett's still Pickett. Was okay. Ground game isn't amazing. It is what it is. Their offense is fine. But this year they have the defense that's legit. I mean, last year they were definitely good, no doubt. But they really they turned it on towards the end of I felt like last year with that defense. This year they just took it to a whole new level where this team could compete with probably not Clemson, but anybody else in the ACC for sure. They might be the second best team in the ACC at this point. They're in North Carolina. It might be
Notre Dame.
Well, okay, Notre Dame's in the ACC this year.
Miami. I mean, they're right there with.
Yeah, but they're right there. Is what I'm saying. Their defense is so good.
Below, but
they're right with them. I think like with that defense, they held. This was one of the best offenses that they're going to face, and they made them look like chumps. I mean, they completely.
Yeah, they played great.
Yeah, it was awesome. So that D line is not with that talent and defense on the defensive line with the pressure. They're going to be in any game. It seems like.
Yeah, they can be exactly with the defense. They can be in any game. With the offense, they're probably not going to blow a ton of teams out. Definitely not good teams. And that's kind of what we thought going into the year. We knew they'd have a great defense. Maybe it's even better than we thought. Yeah, we hoped that the offense could take finally Pickett could take a step forward. It doesn't look like that's happened. It kind of looks like it's the same old Pitt offense. So they're going to play a lot of close games. And the difference between them having a great year and or falling short of expectations is just like one score in a few games. And in this game, they kind of had the luck go their way or whatever, skill, luck, whatever you want to call it. They won by 3.
A 3-point game, they ended up winning. Yeah.
Yeah. And Bill Connolly actually had their post-game win expectancy at 32%. So you could say they got some turnover luck and they got the win. And that's what they need to do to have the 8-9 win season that the fans are hoping for.
Yep.
And their next two games, NC State and Boston College. So they've got a decent chance to be 5-0 going into, I think they play on the road at Miami. That would be a huge game.
Wow.
Oh, okay. I hope that happens.
Yeah. Okay. Next game, as a 4-touchdown favorite, Georgia trailed Arkansas 7-5 entering the second half. But they ended up dominating the second half. They won 37-10. Ryan, how concerned are you about Georgia's offense?
I mean, I'm as concerned as I was going into the game. Well, that's not fair. More concerned, I guess I should say.
Yeah, I would say a little more
going into the game, but I'm more concerned than I even was, because we all kind of knew Jamie Newman was a huge loss. There was no debating that, but it just showed so much in that first quarter or the first half with DeJuan Mathis just like playing horrible. I mean, he was just errant passes, just did not look comfortable whatsoever. And this is, of course, against the Arkansas defense that was the worst, one of the worst in the SEC, terrible, one of the worst in the country last year. So we know they're not stout. They may have improved a little bit since last year, but they're not going to be one of the top half of the SEC. So DeJuan Mathis was obviously not the guy. Stetson Bennett came in and really settled things down for Georgia. Of course, he played pretty well. And if it was between him and Mathis only, I'm sure Bennett would be the guy here for the coming future. But we all know JT Daniels is cleared now, and he's going to be thrown into the mix. I don't think he'll come in and start next week. Just I don't know. I guess I'm just basing that off of the fact that was just cleared. But I'm concerned. They rushed 42 times for just 121 yards. That's under 3 yards a carry. That's brutal when you're going up against an Arkansas defense like that. So I don't know. I mean, maybe they do go to JT Daniels because they need a spark, but I would guess they just stick with Stetson Bennett at least in this next game and see how he does.
If they do start Stetson Bennett, which wouldn't surprise me, but he would have a very short leach to JT Daniels.
I mean, yeah, exactly. That's fair.
And eventually you would expect Daniels to take over. If not right away, if they don't.
I know we'll see, but either way, it's worrisome to answer your question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I guess I kind of echo everything you said. I'd be more worried if the defense didn't look as great as it did. It seems like it is the best defense in the country, possibly by far.
Yeah.
So the offense in most games won't have to do much.
Yeah. But in terms of your question, I was like cautiously optimistic. I think that Mathis could just like take it and run.
Yeah.
And he just didn't do that. Maybe it was just one game. I don't know why. Maybe that was just blind faith, but I thought that he was, because there were kind of the murmurs that he supposedly beat out Newman in camp, and that probably now isn't true. So we'll see. I mean, hopefully Daniels can provide a spark, but Michael, like you said, with that defense, we've seen really good teams in the past just survive because of their defense. Like maybe the offense only cost them a game against Alabama or something, but they could win every other game. So we'll see. I'm not writing them off because I think the offense, it can only go up. But at least if they have that constant of the defense, it's encouraging. But the problem for them is they play Auburn, Tennessee, and Alabama in the next 3 games. So the offense is going to have to do something.
Right. All right. We'll see. Let's get to a few crazy endings. We've got 3 here that we wanted to go through. Ryan, what's yours?
Yeah, my game was Iowa State at TCU. So this was a crazy one in relation to the point spread, really, not necessarily the result of who won or lost. So depending on when you bet the game, it was anywhere from 2.5 to about 3.5 point spread. Iowa State was favored. So going into the last drive here, TCU had the ball, and Iowa State was up 9. So if you're betting Iowa State, you're just like desperately hoping they don't score. TCU doesn't score, and if opposite, obviously, for TCU. So last play of the game, well, I'll just jump to that. Last play of the game, Iowa State had the ball, or TCU had the ball on the 31-yard line, just like 6 seconds to go or something like that. Duggan threw up a prayer to the left corner of the end zone. Somehow Iowa State was just, I don't know, they weren't playing prevent, whatever. Who knows what happened, but the guy got behind him and he lost his leverage, and TCU caught a touchdown pass to put him down 3. Now, me personally, I had Iowa State -3, so I was tied at that point. I was pushing, and I was like, oh, crap, they're going to kick the extra point, and I'm going to lose. Refs go up to Gary Patterson and ask him, hey, do you want to kick the extra point? Or do you want to end the game? And Gary Patterson, he just said, oh, no, game's over. Yeah. So he doesn't kick the extra point. Game ends in 3 points. Obviously, Iowa State wins by 3, so For me, I pushed. A lot of people who had maybe Iowa State -2.5 were extremely happy. And then, or the opposite for TCU. If you had TCU +2.5, you were pretty pissed. So
yeah, well, it's kind of like anyone. It seems like a lot of people were unhappy because, like, I was with you. I had Iowa State -3, and so I don't know. Was I happy or unhappy with it? Because it was a miracle that they even pushed TCU. So that was unlucky. But then it was lucky that
you were unhappy because they scored the miraculous touchdown, and then you were like, well, at least I didn't lose.
Yeah, exactly.
So, it was crazy.
There was a play in that game. Brock Purdy threw the worst.
Oh yeah,
fumble. It ended up being a fumble touchdown because he threw it backwards. It was the worst play I've ever seen.
What was that?
Yeah, he got spun around and just hucked it up, like seemingly trying to throw it out of bounds, I guess. But it went backwards and it did not go out of bounds. It went to a TCU player.
And the
other thing about that, I've watched that play more a few times. Like, what was the TCU defender even doing over there? Yeah, he's like all by himself.
I know.
It was just the most bizarre play. You got to watch it if you haven't seen it.
All right. Well, the other crazy ending. Well, mine is less crazy. Wait, did someone want to say something? Yeah.
No, go for it.
Okay. Texas State at Boston College. Really just more concerning if you're a Boston College fan. That bad performance against not a very good defense in Texas State. So they were down 21-14, Boston College was, just over a minute left. And their quarterback, Phil Dracovic, threw a touchdown to Hunter Long to tie it up. Then they forced a 3-and-out. So Boston College got the ball back with just enough time to drive down the field and make a game-winning 36-yard field goal. So no craziness, really. I mean, that was a couple scores in the final 3 minutes, but just kind of, I guess, disheartening if you're a Boston College fan, although you're probably not too concerned with style points. You just want to get wins if you're BC this year.
Yep. All right. Mine was Georgia Southern at Louisiana. This was exciting.
Louisiana 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah. I think Georgia Southern quarterback Shai Wertz is one of my favorite players. He's not known for his arm since he's running that option, but he went 11 of 18, 255, and made some clutch throws. So with a minute to go, they're down by 7. He threw a 28-yard touchdown pass to Darian Anderson, who made a ridiculous kind of one-handed grab in the end zone. Coach Lunsford went for 2, and Wertz somehow spun out of a sack, essentially, and threw a dime to convert, and they take the lead with just under a minute. But then the Raging Cajuns, they were able to move the ball down in position to kick a 53-yard field goal. Their kicker, Nate Snyder, he was 1 for 4 going into the game, and it basically seemed like there was no shot he was going to make it. But he absolutely drilled it, and they got the win at the Horn. So good for Snyder and good for Louisiana. Poor Georgia Southern.
Well, speaking of crazy plays, though, before that all happened, right before, I think the first time Georgia Southern tried to tie it up or take the lead, they had a receiver going wide open. He caught the pass and he's running into the end zone. And for some reason, he decides to move. Like, there's nobody really that close behind him. He's not at risk of getting tackled, but he decides to move the football into both hands and kind of, he was about to reach it across the end zone instead of just kind of running through. Anyway, as he moves the football, he fumbles it. Nobody touched him. It just pops out of his hands out of the back of the end zone. But luckily for him, I mean, they still ended up losing, but they did get another touchdown to
that play
take the lead.
Right there really strengthens the argument for not having you lose the possession, because like the defense didn't do anything on that one.
Right.
At least on some of the other plays, like they knock it out. Like this was just a total gaffe. Like,
All right. Well, let's quickly go over some of the games from week 4 we haven't brought up yet. So, Trey, you got 4 games in your rapid recaps?
I do. We got Alabama at Mizzou first. The final score was 38-19. It wasn't really that close. Alabama was up 35-6 going into the 4th. Mac Jones, efficient, spreading the ball around to Waddle and Smith. Najee Harris had 3 rushing touchdowns. And the Bama defense with Moses and Surtain, they looked much improved in their first game. Looking forward to seeing them against A&M. West Virginia, Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State won 27-13. Spencer Sanders didn't go to injury, but Shane Illingworth was able to manage the game well enough and rely on the ground game and defense, surprisingly. Key sequence in the game was early in the second quarter. It was scoreless, and LD Brown had a 66-yard touchdown run. A few plays later, Oklahoma State forced a fumble, scooped it up for a 56-yard touchdown. So 14-0, just like that, was too much for the Mountaineers to come back from. Daggy played well enough to get them back in the game, but Hubbard ended up icing it with a late touchdown with just over a minute left, which was significant to some. Army at Cincinnati. Cincinnati's defense was really able to slow down and essentially shut down Army's strong option attack, held them to only 10 points. Give credit to Army's D, though. They didn't let the Bearcats get anything easy. They took away Cincinnati's ground game. They basically intercepted Ritter's option pitch on the first drive of the game, and they returned it for a touchdown. But Desmond Ridder, he was a little inconsistent, but he did enough through the air to get the win. Capped it off with a 60-yard touchdown pass to Jared Dokes, and they won the ranked matchup 24-10. Finally, the SEC, Tennessee played at South Carolina. It was a competitive game. The Vols ended up pulling it out 31-27. They extend their winning streak now to 7. The Vols were up 21-7 early in the third quarter behind an Eric Gray run. But Colin Hill and the Gamecocks, they rallied for a couple scores, ended up tying it. And Garantano, though, he stepped up, led a crutch drive, capped it off by throwing a touchdown pass. And then the game kind of ended in disappointing fashion. South Carolina forced a Tennessee punt with under 2 minutes to get the ball back, but it ended up hitting a Gamecock, and the Vols recovered on that. So that was disappointing, but
yeah,
good win for the Vols. Yep.
All right. Auburn won at home against Kentucky 29-13. Bo Nix played pretty well, especially considering he didn't have much help from the running game. But really the most impressive player on the field was Auburn wide receiver Seth Williams. 6 catches, 112 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was a beast. Like, all Nix basically had to do was get it within reach. And sometimes it felt like the passes weren't even quite within reach, but Seth Williams would go get them. As for Kentucky, they did kind of get screwed at the end of the first half with the refs not giving them a clear touchdown. And Terry Wilson ended up throwing a pick, I think, the next play.
Horrible.
Yeah. So kind of unfortunate there, but they shot themselves in the foot too much that they deserve to lose for sure. Virginia Tech, despite being without 23 players, including starting quarterback Hendon Hooker, blew out NC State 45-24. They've got really good depth at quarterback because Braxton Burmeister played well. Quincy Patterson, third string, played well also.
He did.
I was going to say played well as well. And I was like, wait, I can't say well again.
No.
But then I didn't want to say played good because that doesn't sound right. Anyway, running game was really good. 7.7 yards per carry. And Khalil Herbert, the transfer from Kansas, had a big game. So I'm all in.
He have like 8 rushes, but he's had a huge game.
Yeah, he had 6 carries, I think, for like 105 yards, something like that.
He barely got touches, but he was huge.
Yeah. And the defense had 6 sacks. So yeah, again, I'm all in on Virginia Tech this year. Virginia beat Duke 38-20. Duke turned it over 7 times, including 4 interceptions from Chase Bryce.
Hot garbage.
Yeah, Duke is now 0-3. Virginia's 1-0, but jury's definitely still out on just on the team in general, I guess.
Yeah.
You get 7 turnovers. I mean, you got to give the defense some credit for that.
It was kind of a game in the fourth quarter there, so.
It was, and then Duke turned it over 4 times in that fourth quarter. So
fair enough.
It was no longer a game. But yeah. I want to see Brennan Armstrong play some more. He did throw 2 picks in this one. So like to see more from him. BYU beat Troy 48-7. They are good.
Wow.
One of the best offensive lines.
They can't play a better schedule this year.
What's that?
It's too bad BYU can't play a better schedule this year.
I know. I was just going to say the best team that they have left on their schedule is 59th in SP Plus Houston. So they have a chance to go undefeated, but they'd like to play a really good team. So it's unfortunate. But yeah, offensive line's great. Zach Wilson's great. Defense has given up 10 points in 2 games. So they're legit. And then I just want to quickly touch on 2 of the worst teams ever possibly to start out at their records. So you got 3-0 UTSA, and there are 3 games that were all close. Here's the Sagarin rankings of their opponents. Texas State, 125th. Stephen F. Austin, 201st. And Middle Tennessee, 134th. And apparently they were really lucky to win this weekend. Bill Connolly had it as a 15% post-game win expectancy. So UTSA will take it. Hey, they're 3-0. That's awesome, baby. But I wouldn't overreact. And then UTEP, of course.
Wow.
Perennial bottom of college football. They are now 3-1. Their wins, though, Stephen F. Austin, Abilene Christian, and ULM. Highest Sagarin ranking among those is ULM at 181st. So, yeah, again, I mean, these teams were expected to be bad. They probably are bad, but they will take the wins.
Sure.
In a heartbeat, man. Good for them. Good for them.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to my first game. Florida State at Miami. Miami looks real, and then Florida State looks like a joke. I don't know. Miami won 52-10. Derek King was amazing. Florida State couldn't muster up anything on defense to keep this one interesting. Just an absolute blowout. I mean, I don't know what else to say. This is just
That's about it.
Atrocious, right? Moving on to my next game here. Florida at Ole Miss. This was an interesting game here. Florida ended up winning 51-35. Kyle Trask was awesome in this game. Over 400 yards passing, 6 touchdowns. It helped that he was throwing to Kyle Pitts, who was just incredible, the tight end there, who looks like a for sure first-round draft pick. 170 yards receiving and 4 touchdowns. He was unstoppable. Gators defense is concerning. I will say that. Ole Miss really exposed them. Matt Corral threw for almost 400 yards, 395 yards, and they just essentially went punch for punch. They just kind of maybe here and there, Florida was just a little bit better, but if you're Ole Miss, you're definitely encouraged by what you saw from Lane Kiffin's offense, I will say. And Corral is a sophomore. You got some years there, and Elijah Moore was huge on the receiving end there. So it was a good game to watch.
I mean, it helps when you have the number 1 pick at quarterback too, throwing. So,
for Florida,
exactly. Trask was, I'm telling you guys, rising up the ranks, just amazing in this game.
He might be rising up the ranks.
He was great. He was great.
All right, third game, Vandy at Texas A&M. Talk about an ugly game. A&M ended up winning 17-12. A&M was sloppy, 3 turnovers, 8 penalties. I mean, I really, watching some of this game, they were pounding Vandy on the ground. They were rushing for like 7 yards per attempt, but for whatever reason, they just kept kind of passing with Mond. And don't get me wrong, I like Mond now, but if you're rushing for 7 yards per attempt, just continue to rush the ball. And they kept Vanderbilt in it, and it was very, very ugly. So concerning here for A&M, their offense, obviously without some of the weapons that they've lost. Osmond on the outside was a huge loss, and it showed in this one. So they step up their challenge here for sure with what they got Bama coming up. So oh boy, but they at least got the win. Finally, Georgia Tech at Syracuse. Syracuse showed some signs of life here. They won 37-20. Jeff Sims is kind of the story in this game. He, for the quarterback for Georgia Tech, he threw 4 more interceptions on top of the 4 he already had. It's 8 interceptions in 3 games for the true freshman. He made this game obviously very easy on Syracuse to win. And I don't know, at some point you're maybe thinking Sims might need a little breather and let somebody else give a shot here, because can't throw that many interceptions and win a ball game. So anyways, good win for Syracuse, I guess, but Sims is concerning.
Yeah, he's done a lot of great things, but there you go. He gives it away a lot, apparently.
Tough.
Okay, let's get to a couple segments here. One is just a brief piece of news, which is not even news anymore. It must have just broken shortly after our last podcast, because it feels like it's been forever. Pac-12, the MAC, and Mountain West have announced plans to come back. So now all 10 Power 5 conferences will be back. What
10
what do you guys
Power 5? That's amazing.
Wow,
yeah.
That's incredible.
No, it's true. I said what I said, Trey. And I said it good.
You did.
FBS conferences.
There you go.
What
do you think?
Yeah, Ryan, what do you think about this?
I mean, we all knew it was going to happen even before, it's been old news at this point, but we knew even before it came out that after everybody else made the decision to come back, it was pretty much inevitable that Pac-12, MAC, and Mountain West were probably going to come back too. I guess maybe the most surprising one is maybe a little bit of the Pac-12, just because of, how, I mean, they were very clear on their guidelines and however the research that they showed and the transparency of why they weren't going to play. For them to kind of do a 180 on that and play is, I'm not going to say it's bad decision or anything like that, but it's just maybe a little bit the most surprising. But they are going to start super late, and it's just what they're only going to play 7 games at this point. So it's definitely better than nothing. I'm glad they're all coming back. We love the Mountain West. We love Maction. And of course, we want to see the Pac-12. And Michael's a USC grad, of course. So, I'm happy. I'm happy that I'm happy for the kids that want to play. I mean, like it would just be such a disappointing if you were one of those kids. So for that reason, for the kids that want to play, I'm happy about it.
Yeah, a little bit of peer pressure kind of snuck in as everyone else came back, but I'm glad that they were able to. They're all aboard now, sort out the testing and able to carry some form of a season out. And for me personally, like I'm looking forward to having some weekday MAC games. They've talked about doing that at least in November. And then some more Saturday night games with some Pac-12 after dark, some random UNLV Air Force game. I'm all about it because it's been a little light. I want to stay up till midnight on Saturday watching football.
Yeah, no West Coast games to keep us entertained.
I know this past Saturday, all we had was Troy BYU, and that game was a blowout from the start. But I mean, I think you talk about the Pac-12. I think in particular, they handled this pretty well from the beginning. When they first postponed the season, they released the detailed report like that everyone complained that the Big Ten didn't release of hey, here's what our doctors say. This is exactly why we are postponing the season, and here's some reasons of why it might be safer at a later date. One of the big things that they outlined there was the potential availability of rapid daily testing. That, of course, has come, I think, much quicker than everybody thought. So that's one of the main reasons that they're coming back.
Been the difference for Big Ten and Pac-12 was the rapid testing. So,
all right. So yeah, they're going to be playing a 7-game season. They're all going to be playing 7 games. So we'll see. Hopefully they're able to get through them without
that schedule, and it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see the schedule because that means every team in the, I guess, regular season, every team is going to be playing. Of course, there are 5 teams in their division and 1 team from the other division. So yeah, one crossover.
Be very interesting.
It's gonna be very like. Will USC be playing Oregon? That would be crazy. I don't know. But,
well, hopefully not for your case.
Yeah, I hope not, and I would predict that
hopefully
won't
you
be
get like the Beavers.
I don't want to choose anybody because then I'll say it and then we're going to end up losing to them.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I hope for the Beavers, even though they're not bad.
No, they're not. But
yeah, if I had a choice. Okay. Anyway, next segment we got here, we're going to talk about some under the radar breakout players. So players that maybe the casual fan or maybe even some of our listeners haven't heard of. That at least through 1, 2, 3 games, how many they've played, are breaking out. So let's go one by one, I guess. Trey, we've all got 3. Who's your first one, Trey?
That works. I think I probably stole this one from you guys. So I'm gonna go with within us 3, our most obvious one, Malik Willis, Liberty quarterback. He's the Auburn transfer. If you don't already know, he's fit right into Hugh Freeze's offense. Dual threat. He's done it all so far. Been efficient, over 70% completions, hasn't turned it over. In rushing alone, he's ranking in the top 15 of some stats, including running backs. He's averaging over 7 yards per carry. I mean, he's the reason that they're 2-0 and not 0-2 because they've had a couple close games.
And they got North Alabama and UL Monroe, who's 148th, I guess, and Sagarin, you said, coming up next. So they in their next 2 games. So they're looking at a strong 4-0 potential start here.
Yep. Okay, mine is also in the state of Virginia. Virginia Tech defensive end Justice Reed, and he's a grad transfer from Youngstown State where he had 13 sacks. Old. What's that?
He's 42 years old.
Yeah, that's the thing about him is he started out at Florida, he redshirted there, ended up transferring to Youngstown State, had some injury issues, so he's been getting extra years. This is his 7th year in playing college football. And game 1 against NC State, he had 5 tackles and 2 sacks. So Virginia Tech fans were going crazy about him on Twitter. A lot of Chuck Norris type jokes, which were pretty funny.
Yeah.
And so this is year 7 for him. And remember, this year doesn't count for anyone's eligibility. So he could come back for year 8 next year.
That's awesome.
Which would be crazy. Hopefully he goes to the NFL. Hopefully he has a great year.
I hope he comes back and be the first 8th year player ever in college football history.
I don't know if that's a true statement, but I can't imagine there've been many. If there have been any,
I don't know if there's been a 7-year. That's
7's a lot.
That's tough. All right, I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna kind of cheat here. I'm gonna go with 2 guys. I'm gonna go a couple of guys on Pittsburgh's defensive line. I'm gonna say Patrick Jones and Rashad Weaver. They're both very similar players. They're both about 6'5", 260, 270. but they're both just getting after it on the defensive front. They're just living in the backfield defensive of their offensive opponents. They're both tied for third in the nation in sacks. They each have 3.5 right now. They're obviously the main reason why Pitt is 3-0 right now and looking really, really good. That defense has just been dominant. So Patrick Jones, Rashad Weaver. We knew Rashad Weaver is kind of a proven commodity, but he was injured all of last year. So we didn't get to see him. And Patrick Jones is kind of breaking out maybe a little bit more than he has in the past. So you guys are a handful to deal with even after losing Jalen Twyman. So they are impressive.
Yep. I'm going to go to UCF, their wide receiver, Marlon Williams. And we kind of wondered who would step up in that receiving core after losing Gabriel Davis to the NFL. They had veteran Trey Nixon returning too, but so far Williams has been Dylan Gabriel's main target. He leads the country in receptions. He's got 23 in only 2 games. He's 4th in the country in receiving yards, over 12 yards per catch. He's really busting out so far this season.
Okay, I've got Datrick Harrington, running back for App State, had 211 yards and 4 touchdowns against Campbell this past weekend.
Oh boy!
And I just had to include him because I know, yeah, not the greatest opponent, but hey, he got it done.
Did you see their schedule this year for Campbell?
It seems like I saw them play Coastal. Who else are they going to play?
They're just playing all FBS teams. It seems like they're going to get smoked every week. Like I think they got Wake this week.
Oh, that's right. They play on Friday against Wake, I think. Well, good for them.
I know.
Experience. But yeah, no, App State has had a 1,000-yard rusher for 8 straight years. So he's looking to be the 9th. They do have only 11 games as opposed to 12 this season, but he's clearly got a shot.
200-plus game helps.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'll go with my second guy here. I got Tulane sophomore running back Cameron Carroll. In 3 games, he already has 8 touchdowns, 7 rushing and 1 in the air. He's averaging 7 yards per carry. Just a fantastic start here, especially since he wasn't necessarily supposed to be the guy going into the year. There was an injury to one of their premier backs, so he was kind of an up and comer and nobody really knew about. He's a big back and just kind of taking that offense by storm. So Cameron Carroll's off to a hot start.
Yeah, they've got another guy too, Tajay Spears, who's also having a big year. Yeah,
they've been great on the ground this year.
All right, my last guy is Miles Murphy, Clemson defensive end. We know about all the NFL attrition that Clemson has had in the last couple seasons on defense, but so this year we didn't really know who would rise up from all the blue chip talent that they've acquired. So far, Murphy has been the man. He's a freshman, so if you don't follow recruiting, you might not have heard of him. A lot of the focus, though, was in the recruiting. If you did follow recruiting, a lot of the focus was on Clemson landing the number 1 overall, Brian Bresee, at D tackle and DJ Ugalele at quarterback. Murphy has had a monster first couple games, specifically in his first game against Wake Forest. 7 tackles, 3 for loss, 2 sacks. He played sparingly in their second game against the Citadel, but he forced a fumble in that one. So he seems kind of poised to be the next great Clemson D lineman.
All right, last one here is, I don't know how good this guy's going to be, but his first game was great. Another freshman. So Lavelle Davis, lightly recruited, 6'7" freshman receiver from Virginia. I had never heard of him before this weekend, but he had 4 catches for 101 yards and 2 touchdowns against Duke. And Bronco Mendenhall said after the game, quote, "It was one of our best kept secrets. It's hard to hide 6'7" for about 12 weeks in practice, but the same plays that he made tonight, he's been making against us almost every day."
Wow.
So I don't know if that's just coach speak, but the guy proved it on the field. So It's interesting to see 6'7" receiver, lightly recruited, but
yeah, true.
Good for him.
All right, my last one is Ulysses.
Oh, you got one too, yeah.
What?
I thought we were done.
Oh no, I got one more. Ulysses Bentley the fourth. Sweet name. He is a freshman running back for SMU. He's kind of a smaller guy, but he's been off to a hard start this year. He's got over 400 yards from scrimmage, 7 touchdowns in 3 games, averaging over 10 yards per carry. He's been pretty much unstoppable so far. They've had a little bit of a lighter schedule, but he's been awesome. Looks like they have a nice piece to kind of go with Shane Bayshell there in the backfield.
All right, so I want to do a quick little trivia question here because I mentioned that App State has had 8 straight seasons with 1,000-yard rusher. Only one team has had more currently that has an active streak. Who is that one team? That's a tough question. Just kind of throw out there.
Boy, I'm two come to my head immediately. Wisconsin and Boise State.
One of those is correct.
Yeah,
Gotta be Wisconsin.
I'm gonna go Boise.
It is Boise. Ryan got it right. That was very good. Yeah, I'm surprised Wisconsin. I don't know what the year that it didn't happen.
Well, they probably had a couple. They split a lot of the years. They had those 2 good backs. So
yeah. But anyway, yeah, Boise State has 11 in a row.
Yeah, they've just turned them out.
Okay, let's move on to week 5. Let's make our against the spread picks. Ryan and I know had a down week last week, so we'll try and come back from that.
We're still ahead, man.
We are. I think all 3 of us are.
Yeah,
we're hanging.
Winning records, so we'll take that, obviously. Okay, so we've got some ACC games with some double-digit underdogs. I'm going to list 4 here, and you got to tell me who you like the most as an underdog against the spread. So we got Virginia plus 28 at Clemson. We got Boston College at home plus 14 against North Carolina. Duke at home plus 10.5 against Virginia Tech. And then NC State plus 14 on the road at Pitt. So Ryan, who you taking there?
I'm going to take Boston College here as my my double-digit underdog. I know obviously they struggled last week against Texas State, but just go rewind a week earlier and they blew out Duke in Durham. I know Duke's not good, but I'm not going to freak out over one game against Texas State, who I know Michael says is one of the worst teams, but Texas State has shown some signs of life, especially on offense.
Yeah. I mean, they're not. There's a lot worse teams out there.
Exactly, and Boston College did muster up some offense and find a way to win. So I'm going to give them some credit for that. And I just think, especially with North Carolina, they had a slow start against Syracuse. So Boston College, I trust them with some of their offensive line and David Bailey. And Phil Dracovic has impressed me so far. So I don't see this as like a huge shock. I wouldn't be surprised if this was a game going into the fourth quarter. I just think BC will probably be up for this one. Maybe they were not so much up for empty stadium against Texas State after they just had a huge win in their eyes at Duke. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if BC was right there until the end. Yeah,
not a bad pick. Duke, man, I thought about Duke, but I just did not like. We talked about all the turnovers they had. Chase Bryce, not so great. And then NC State, I just think that Pitt's defense should just stymie them. I mean, Bailey Hockman got pulled last week. They just did not look good. I don't have a lot of faith in, and not even in their defense. They've given up 45 points in both their games, so not a great start. So I actually kind of, by process of elimination, went to Virginia. I know they're playing Clemson, so it's no easy task, but they're getting 28. And, Brennan Armstrong wasn't super efficient, but he at least led a good offensive showing against Duke. And I'm at least a little more encouraged than I was prior to the season about that Wahoo offense. Mendenhall, he's built up a little depth to be a little more competitive. I mean, they're not going to scare Clemson, but this line might be slightly inflated.
That 6'7" receiver who can catch a few touchdowns against Clemson.
There you go. Yeah, why not throw it up to him? Yeah, I actually went with Virginia too, plus 28. It's going to be Clemson's first game against a decent defense, so I think Virginia can at least get some stops that maybe Wake and I guess the Citadel, was it? Yeah, weren't able to get. And on offense, I don't know. I mean, I guess I'll just reserve judgment after that Duke game. It was kind of a weird game with so many turnovers, and but they're supposed to have a much better offensive line than in years past. So if Virginia can have Wayne Talapapa make some plays on the ground and just kind of slow down the game, then 28. I mean, it doesn't take much, but 38-14, I could see something like that.
Yeah. Fair.
Okay. How about which of these double-digit Big 12 underdogs do you like? We got 2 of them. TCU at Texas. They're plus 13. Or you can take Kansas at home against Oklahoma State, and you get 21.5.
I'm going to go with TCU. The Horned Frogs, they moved the ball a lot better when Max Duggan went in the game last week. He ended up going 16 of 19, 241, 3 scores. Despite not even playing the whole game. And that was kind of his bugaboo last year. He wasn't overly efficient. So that was encouraging if I'm a Horned Frog fan. And So I don't see why they won't be able to move the ball at least semi well against the Longhorn defense that we saw last week. And Patterson, their defense wasn't a strength, but he can maybe teach them about their first game mistakes and at least improve a little bit to try and slow down Ellinger. Not saying they will, but
yeah. I was also Max Duggan. You see that stat line? It's like, whoa, that's not what he was doing a lot last year. At least I know he did have a good game, I think, against Texas last year. So maybe he can do that again and be even better this year if he's really taken that step forward. But the defense giving up a bunch of big plays against Iowa State last week kind of canceled that out for me.
Yeah.
So I'll take Kansas plus 21.5. I'll come back. Well, it didn't work out last week for me against Baylor, but I will say the score last week I think was worse than maybe the game played out because Baylor returned 2 kickoffs for touchdowns. Exactly. That kind of inflates it. And Charlie Brewer in the offense, anyway. They would have scored anyway. Well, the offense didn't actually play all that well for Baylor.
You.
Charlie Brewer is not his best game. Now Spencer Sanders might play in this one, but even if he does, he's not going to be 100%. So why not 21.5?
Yeah, I would rest him another week if I was Gundy and try to get him 100% if I could. But
yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, but I'm gonna go with Trey on this one. I'm gonna take TCU. Obviously, a lot of it has to do with the fact that Duggan did show out so well. So Texas just worried me last week with that defense. It just kind of seems like more of the same. After that performance, I don't trust them to blow out a decent team like TCU. And I do think TCU is going to be ready to go. They obviously play. It seems they always play Texas really well. So I'm taking the Horned Frogs.
Okay, let's move on to the SEC, the other Power 5 conference. Did I use Power 5 conference correctly there, Trey? That time it was appropriate?
Okay.
Great.
You passed.
So SEC underdogs, we got Arkansas plus 18 at Mississippi State. We got Vandy at home to LSU. You're getting 20.5 with Vandy. South Carolina plus 18 at Florida, or Missouri plus 11.5 at Tennessee. So I'll pick first here. I liked South Carolina plus 18 at Florida. I think their secondary can put up much more of a fight against Florida than Ole Miss did last week, especially if they're able to get Israel Mukwamu back from injury. I know he didn't play the second half last week, but hoping he can be back. And I thought offensively, Colin Hill played reasonably well. The one kind of mistake he made was an interception that I don't even think really was totally his fault. The receiver dropped it. So, I think the offense for South Carolina, I think quarterback play is going to be much better this year. I think maybe they could hang in there enough to get a cover.
Okay, I hear you in that one. I'm gonna go a different way. I'm gonna take Vandy getting the plus 20.5 at home against LSU. Of course, we just saw LSU lose to Mississippi State, who we thought was not going to be all that great coming into this year, and we just saw Vanderbilt go on the road at A&M and almost win in College Station. Now, Vandy's offense was horrible, but they did show some promising signs of life on defense. So if they can just keep LSU within check, we know Miles Brennan looked a little uncomfortable. So if Vandy can continue to do that like they did to Kellen Mond, I think they can make this one interesting. And I just don't see LSU being able to go in and necessarily blow them out right away. So I think 20.5 is a pretty big spread there.
And you're right. You're right about Vanderbilt's offense not being very efficient at all against A&M. But people did like what they saw from Ken Seals. He was 20 for 29. Like, it wasn't for a lot of yards per attempt.
Yeah, it was for pretty short yards, but
hey,
your first
game for Vanderbilt to see a true freshman come in game one on the road and look competent. Like, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's better than fumbling and throwing a bunch of picks and throwing deep balls that have no chance. So
yeah. One of the other games we haven't touched on is Mizzou at Tennessee. I just didn't want to go with Mizzou. I liked what I saw with Tennessee. They got a good road win in Columbia. So behind with that rushing attack behind that good O-line, I think they should be fine. The one point I did want to make, Michael, on your game was South Carolina. I think Muschamp, if I was playing college fantasy, which I'm not, but I think they're going to really try and shut down Kyle Pitts. So if I were like playing fantasy, I would want to get either Grimes or Tony, because I think they're going to focus on Pitts and it's going to open it up for those two guys on the outside. Okay. But my little sidebar tidbit. But no, the game I actually am going to choose is in the Arkansas Mississippi State game. Mississippi State, they're riding high. Obviously, this could be a letdown spot. It's scary to take Arkansas here just because they're going up against that air raid, but I'm going to pick them just because of the situation. And I think Felipe Franks, obviously he looked shaky, but they're playing arguably the best defense in the country. Mississippi State doesn't have that. So I think they can at least score enough to keep it within that 18.
All right. Let's move on to some of the big games that we'll all cover here. So first one is an SEC game. It's Texas A&M at Alabama. Alabama is favored 17, Ryan.
Yeah, I like Alabama here. If we're just going off one week here, A&M looks shaky. I'm not sure if they have the weapons on offense anymore. Obviously, Isaiah Spiller, I know, looked good in the backfield, but they still just put up 17 points against a horrible defense in Vanderbilt. Alabama, like Trey mentioned earlier, they look much improved on the defensive side of the ball. Surtain back, looking good. Dylan Moses, obviously, coming back from that injury, is helping out. So I'm not confident in A&M being able to sustain any long drives, and I think Alabama, with all their weapons that they have, Mac Jones, of course, looks amazing. His first half was just awesome at Missouri, and we know Missouri's proven to have a pretty solid defense. So I'm going to take A&M minus the 17. I'm not A&M. I'm going to take Alabama minus the 17 points here.
Yeah, you bring up that A&M offense. Yeah, I got questions. Was it jitters? Were they not showing all their cards? Was it the COVID opt-outs? I mean, Vandy's defense, it's hard to tell. They're going to need to find answers fast, of course. But you touched on it. The one bright spot was Isaiah Spiller, 117 yards on only 8 carries. So if he can get some big run plays to help open it up and make Mon more comfortable, then maybe they can muster up something against that Tide defense. They also had 5 fumbles. They lost 3 of them. So obviously if they do that, it's lights out. So I think this week I'm going to kind of semi-ignore that, say that they keep the ball in their possession, make a few more plays with Mond, and they got enough talent to keep this respectable.
Yeah. Okay. So you're taking A&M. I want to be high on A&M this year just because, like we said in the SEC preview, in 2019, it was all gearing towards 2020. Jimbo's been recruiting. They're going to have so much returning production. But as we've said recently, they've had, Ryan, you mentioned Jamon Osborne opt out at receiver. I think that's just such a massive loss for what
Huge.
That was kind of the thing you worry about is their passing game, right? With Kellen Mond, because he's a fine passer, but you'd feel a lot better about him when
a guy that can make tough catches.
Exactly. So, I just don't have confidence that Kellen Mond passing game can keep up with Alabama. So I'm going to pick the Tide, and I'm actually going to make it my lock.
Ooh.
Okay. Memphis minus 2.5 at SMU. What do you think, Trey?
Well, this was a thriller to watch last season. And it's going to be one of the key games this year to help determine the AAC champ. You got two of the best quarterbacks in the conference. You got White and Bichelle. Memphis, though, it's tough for them. They're going to have to shake off basically a month's worth of rust since they haven't played with all the canceled games they've had. And Coach Silverfield, he even said they're not at full strength, and his quote was saying they won't even be at kickoff. So I'm leaning towards the Mustangs in this one because their offense has been firing on all cylinders this year. In Memphis's one game against Arkansas State, they gave up over 400 yards. I think the difference will be the guy you mentioned earlier, Ryan, the running back Ulysses Bentley, the fourth. I think that ground game will be an added element for SMU.
Okay. I'm gonna go the other way. I'm gonna go with Memphis. SMU is 3-0, yes, but they haven't really played anyone. So my preseason opinion that they are a notch below Memphis hasn't really changed much. Obviously, SMU getting this game at home narrows the gap, but I'm still willing to lay 2.5. I just like Memphis's defense better. I thought they did a reasonable job. Logan Bonner and Lane Hatcher in their first game. I know it's hard to shut those guys down, but I just think that Memphis's defense can be the difference here. So minus 2.5.
I'm going to go with the Mustangs, a contender in the AAC. Yeah. They're at home. Memphis isn't going to be at full strength. They've been off for a long time. SMU's offense it's been firing on all cylinders. I think the defense can maybe step up a little bit, but they don't have to be amazing. It's going to be a shootout most likely anyways. I just feel like SMU at home has the advantage in this one. They were right there with them last year. SMU was so close in their 2 losses in the regular season last year.
They were down 22 midway through the 4th quarter last year.
They made a good comeback.
They made a little comeback, but
made a good comeback. Different story. It's a new year. They shall. Ulysses Bentley, sweet name.
No, I expect this to be a close game.
I'm taking SMU. I think they're being underrated here. So Mustangs.
Okay. Next up, we got OU -7.5 at Iowa State. I was obviously big on Iowa State coming into the year. I still like them, despite that first loss. And I think I might have even picked them to win this game, but just sort of as like a bold call.
You did.
This spread though has me a little bit tempted to take OU, especially to bounce back after that loss last week against K-State. But I'm going to stick with Iowa State +7.5. Brock Purdy had a big game last year against Oklahoma, and I guess you could argue now that the Oklahoma defense is maybe the same or worse as it was last year with some of the losses they've had. And I think on the other side of the ball, Jaquan Bailey and Will McDonald on Iowa State's defensive line could definitely put some pressure. Combined for 6.5 sacks through 2 games. Jaquan Bailey in particular is just a beast. He had, I think his 3.5 sacks all came in that TCU game. Like he was a stud all over the place. Yeah. So give me +7.5.
I agree with you. I'm going to take Iowa State here. Obviously, Oklahoma did not impress last week. Iowa State's going to be able to move the ball on this OU defense. And with the pressure that Iowa State's D-line can put on Spencer Rattler doesn't have me convinced that he can handle some pressure, especially in his first road test. I know there's no fans, but it's still a road test against the best, probably the best defense. Like I would say they're probably better than K-State, Iowa State's defense. So you're going to have to see it with him after that terrible performance. And 7.5 on the road against a solid team against Iowa State, who the past couple of years, of course, has played them, Oklahoma, just neck and neck. So I'm not seeing any reason to go against that. Taking the Cyclones.
Yeah, you
are you locking it?
No.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I played the clip. I thought I was just like he's gonna lock it in.
No, sorry.
No, you touched on how close it's been. The last 4 games in this series have been decided by 10 or less. Breece Hall. I'm taking Oklahoma. I think they are gonna bounce back. I'm actually gonna make Oklahoma my lock.
Ooh, okay.
Breece Hall scares me a bit because he's been running it well, and obviously we touched on the OU defense, so I won't beat that anymore. But I don't see Oklahoma losing the turnover battle 4-0 like they did last week. And actually, if you look at their defense, the run defense hasn't been so much the issue. So Purdy could throw it all over the yard against them, but they also won't have a block punt against them. I just think that so much went against them last week. I really think that coming off a loss, it's not a good situation, I think, for Iowa State, in my opinion. I don't know the way I'm looking at it through my eyes is I don't know if I want this pissed off Oklahoma team. And TCU put up almost 500 yards on Iowa State. So I think Oklahoma could do something similar.
Yeah. And when you look at it last week, Oklahoma lost the turnover battle 4-0 and still had to lose on a 50-yard field goal. So it's not the worst thing that could possibly have happened.
Yeah. I'm just banking on a bounce back. Who knows?
Okay. Auburn at Georgia. This is where game day is going to be. Georgia is favored 6.5. Ryan, are you locking in someone here?
Not yet. I'm saving it for my honorable mention.
You're waiting. Okay.
Yeah. Got honorable mention still coming up, Mike.
All right. That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. But in this game, I will take Auburn. I like the road team here. Auburn's got a better defense, of course, than Arkansas. No.
Oh, you're locking it in? Wow.
Yeah, no, not locking it in. I just don't trust Georgia to be able to really separate themselves from Auburn here. And first game, Kentucky had a good defense, of course, and I liked kind of what I saw from Bo Nix. And you mentioned the game that Seth Williams had. He kind of did break out last year, but he seems to be even better this year. Anthony Schwartz is, of course, a great kind of underneath guy, a little quicker. So they got the weapons, and I don't see Georgia being able to blow out a good Auburn team after what I saw after week 1. So I think I'm gonna bet Auburn plus the 6.5.
The over-under in this game is only 45, which is about as low as you'll see in college football these days. So I'm going to take the 6.5 points as well with Auburn. I think Georgia's defense is going to be a little too much. I think they'll actually win this game straight up, but I'm a little more confident in that Auburn offense, like you mentioned, Ryan. I just don't know how effective if Daniels plays, and then Bennett against an Auburn defense. So it'll be fascinating to watch that Georgia offense against a good defense.
Yeah.
But I just trust Bo Nix a little more, and also because what I was concerned about with Georgia last week was I think one of you guys mentioned earlier, they only had 2.9 yards per carry against Arkansas. I thought, okay, if their pass game's not there, they'll at least be able to run it well. That wasn't so much the case. So I'm going to take Auburn.
Okay, I'm taking Georgia. Maybe I'm just not adjusting quickly enough to this new Georgia offense, but I don't know. They're just so talented that overall as a team, obviously the defense in particular, but I still have Georgia as the other team in that argument with Florida for second best team in the SEC right now. I think with Stetson Bennett or JT Daniels, the offense will hopefully never look as bad as it did in that first half against Arkansas, and the defense still the best thing out there in the country. So Auburn, though, they can prove it to me this game. I mean, there was a good first test against Kentucky, and they definitely passed that. So my opinion of Bo Nix has gone up, but I don't know. I guess I'm not just totally bought in that the passing game will be consistent because it wasn't last year. But we'll see.
Fair enough.
Okay, let's get to, Ryan, the honorable mentions where you will be making a lock.
I will. It's a lock that I'm going to make a lock here in the honorable mentions. All right, my first game. I got 2 of them here. First one is Louisiana Tech. The Bulldogs playing at BYU here. BYU is up favored about 23.5 right now. This one's going to be played on Friday. Got a couple of 2-0 teams here. I'm taking the Cougars, BYU. Louisiana Tech is 2-0, but they have also given up 69 points to Southern Miss and Houston Baptist. Nice, right? BYU has obviously shown very, very well in their first 2 games. They just demolished a decent Troy team. Don't think Louisiana Tech is all that much better than Troy, so I'm going to take BYU. I'm going to make them my lock of the week. Thank you. And my second game, I got Baylor's is -3 in Morgantown at West Virginia. I'm going to take the Mountaineers here. Baylor, I feel like Baylor got off to a slow start against Kansas. Obviously didn't end the game. They had like Michael said, they had a couple returns for TDs. Charlie Brewer wasn't very efficient. He really actually struggled against a pretty bad Kansas defense. And we saw what Coastal Carolina kind of had much more success offensively against them. So I don't think that's just they're going to walk into Morgantown and just win there. I think Daggy, West Virginia can take this one. Maybe the few bounces will actually come their way this time. So I'm going to take West Virginia +3.
Okay. And I'm going to apologize as the sound guy right now. We're kind of switching to a new system, and the drops, the music have not been on point. So
wow.
I'm deeply sorry, guys.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
letting you down.
It's early in the season.
Can I opt out of this podcast?
I bet. All right. Texas Tech at Kansas State. Kansas State's favored 1.5. Not a ton of respect at home against Texas Tech.
Yeah.
Only favored 1.5. I know that, I mean, they did lose at home to a shorthanded Arkansas State team, so I guess they're not perfect, but Texas Tech struggled at home against Houston Baptist. So I kind of see these teams, I was going to say equal, but I think Kansas State's a little better. So only -1.5. I'll take them at home. And then Arkansas State, -3 at Coastal Carolina. This is a big game for both teams trying to play spoiler in their respective divisions in the Sun Belt. I think Arkansas State is a deserving favorite because of the way they've played, competing with Memphis, of course, winning at K-State. But I got to take the favorite team of the podcast, Coastal Carolina, the Chanticleers, +3. And the reason is Grayson McCall, the freshman quarterback, just kind of seems to have that it factor. I know they've only played Kansas and Campbell, so this will be maybe a little bit bigger test.
The it factor.
He's got the it factor. I'm telling you, like
way better than what we thought.
No, better than what they've had, no doubt.
Yeah, and he's got some good skill talent around him. CJ Marable at running back, the highly likely duo at wide receiver and tight end.
Likely has been good.
Yeah, so Coastal.
All right, mine. My first game, we got Ole Miss at Kentucky. Kentucky's favored 6.5. I'm going to take the points with Ole Miss. They just put up over 600 yards of offense on that great Gators defense, or at least we thought great Gators defense. Matt Corral, Elijah Moore teamed up really well. Elijah Moore had over 200 yards receiving. No reason they can't be effective against the Wildcats. Kentucky will be able to move it well, and Terry Wilson will end up looking pretty good against that poor Ole Miss defense. They'll get big plays too, but I'm going to take the near touchdown with Kiffin's boys. Navy at Air Force. Navy's favored 6.5. I don't know what to think about this game because we've seen Navy kind of play Jekyll and Hyde this year, and Air Force looks like they're potentially going to be without some contributors, as they've had as many as 40 players on what they call administrative turnback by the academy, which essentially means they can separate from the service for the semester. So most of these key losses appear to be on defense, so I think Navy should be able to move the ball pretty well on them. But the biggest loss for Air Force in general is they lost their quarterback, Donald Hammond, who he was an absolute stud last year. He's a cadet in not good standing, which means he's allowed to practice but not play. So with all these Air Force question marks, I'm going to take Navy. Charlotte is playing at FAU, and FAU's favored 6. Each team has had their cancellations, share of cancellations this year. This is Charlotte's only second game and Florida Atlantic's first. But in Charlotte's one game against App State, Chris Reynolds looked pretty poor. He was 11 of 30, 2 picks, got injured, and Healy has said that they'll give the transfer Dom Schaffner some reps this week too. So I'm going to take FAU. They bring in Willie Taggart. They're the defending conference champs. They had an outstanding offense last year, should be strong this year. Look for them to use Miami transfer tight end Michael Irvin II in some key plays and get the win.
All righty. Let's close out this episode with a questionable finish. North Dakota State, with NFL prospect Trey Lance at quarterback, has their only game of the season this Saturday, playing against Central Arkansas. If you could watch a former college football player play one more game, who would it be?
That's such a tough question. Like, there's so many that I would want to watch. I mean, I kind of have 2. Can I say 2?
Sure, fine.
Wow. Thank you so much. Number 1, I will go with Lamar Jackson. He was so awesome.
I mean, I thought you would go with someone like maybe longer ago, or like who isn't you're seeing every week on TV.
Yeah, but he was I want to see him back in college when he was just
that's
absolutely.
It's a fine answer. But it's kind of funny to me.
I mean, we're not I like the NFL, of course, but that's not my forte. That's not my cup of tea. I absolutely love college football. He was amazing for college football.
Okay,
number
next
2.
Joe Burrow.
What?
Yeah. Is it Joe Burrow? The next one?
No.
Okay.
It's Ndamukong Suh. Got to go the homer pick.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. God, I just love seeing a dominant defensive player like that. He controlled a game on defense. It's amazing. I haven't seen anything since.
All right. So mine, I'd go with Tua probably.
Oh God!
Man, it's been so long. I just really.
What about KJ Costello?
Not quite. Too far.
Okay.
It's been a couple of years here. Let's give me a
know.
break.
No,
Michael
Lamar Jackson is fine. It just struck me as funny because it's not that long ago. But hey, I can't tell you who you want to see. That's fine. Maybe we didn't appreciate him enough at Louisville.
You want to go watch the Four Horsemen again?
That's my answer.
Those were great times. Huh?
Sanders. I mean, I never even got to see him play one game. Of course, I was not alive, but he's just the highlights. It seems like he's maybe a better Reggie Bush.
Yeah, very similar.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I'm kind of similar, Michael. I actually went with Bo Jackson. He won the Heisman before I was even born, but I loved watching his highlights. It'd be fun to watch a dominant running back with the speed and strength.
Okay. Next question came from a post on RCFB. It says, if your coach suddenly quit, who would your school go after?
Okay, well, obviously I'm thinking of from a Nebraska point of view. I would have to say I guess at this point, Luke Fickell. He's proving himself at Cincinnati. His style seems like it would fit at Nebraska. He just got the best AAC recruiting class ever. So I think I would take Fickell.
Okay, mine's for USC. And so it's asking who would they go after? Or I guess who would I want them to go after? If you're going to do a thorough coaching search, you got to go for some pie in the sky guys. So I would say Urban Meyer. I'm going to list multiple guys: James Franklin, Bob Stoops, and Chris Peterson. I don't know how realistic those guys are, but
yeah,
you go after.
Well, if you're USC, you got a shot.
Yeah.
Nebraska doesn't quite have a shot at those guys.
No.
No. So I like Trey's pick for Nebraska. Luke Fickell's a good one. Not entirely certain he'd want to go there. I don't know.
I know.
I'm gonna go with I'll go with a guy that's more under the radar, at least from national perspective, Billy Napier, just because of how amazing he's doing down in Louisiana. I'll leave it there. The Raging Cajuns have been, of course, on the fast track. They've pulled out a couple miracles here the past couple weeks winning, but he seems like an up and comer for sure and highly successful.
I thought about Brian Harsin too. Not the sexiest, but he's good.
Be USC as well.
Yeah.
All right. Upset special. You got to pick a 7+ point underdog to win outright. I'm going to take Missouri to win outright at Tennessee. I think we've talked about their defense. I think it's better than it's given credit for. I'm cautiously optimistic on what Eli Drinkwitz can do with Sean Robinson at quarterback. And we all know on the other side, Jarrett Garantano, he could have a game where he struggles.
Yep. It's no Garantano. He'll do well. So, I think it was actually more of an upset that neither of you got a hole-in-one this weekend. Thank goodness.
Ooh,
thank goodness.
Wow. It got pretty close there.
I would not have.
Yeah, you were pretty close on that last hole.
Yeah.
Nice little birdie.
4 feet or so?
Oh, man.
Close enough to where I could actually make the putt.
Yeah.
Not a ton of, oh my gosh. Not a ton of options though for my true upset special. I'm actually going to take TCU against Texas. I talked about it earlier. We liked how Max Duggan moved the ball. I'm just going to take a shot there. Don't see why TCU can't muster up some offense against Texas.
All right.
Ryan's got one. I messed up the music again. Go ahead, Ryan. I'm sorry.
Wow, you're going to shut me out, especially when I hit my upset special last week.
Oh,
Mississippi State. I picked them. Again, 16.5 point dogs at LSU.
That's a big one. Nice.
I know. Thank you very much. Yeah. But this week I'm going to go a smaller spread. I'm going to take Iowa State 7.5. They play Oklahoma tough every year. It's neck and neck. I really think they can pull it off again in Ames.
All right. Well, that'll do it for the College Football Bros podcast. Again, if you're interested in betting, check out MyBookie and use that promo code CFBros. That helps us out.
All caps.
And we will talk to you next week. Bye. That's all.
You've been listening to the College Football Bros. If you have any questions for the next podcast, email them to collegefootballbros@gmail.com. To keep up with the brothers on social media, like them on Facebook at College Football Bros, follow them on Instagram at College Football Bros, and for their commentary on Saturdays, follow them on Twitter at CFB Bros. Thanks for listening.